Now let's start off with chapter 1, the role and need for the new. So creativity is the phenomenon whereby something new or valuable is formed. Let's take a look at the 4P model of creativity. So we have person, process, product, and the press or the environment. Person refers to the entrepreneur who uses their skills, creative abilities, and motivation to create a product. Process refers to the procedure involved in creating and developing the product and includes creativity techniques, thinking, and actions. Product refers to the outcome of the creative process. And press represents the environment in which we live and operate in. But what are some of the myths of creativity? Well, the first myth is that creativity can't be taught, or that women are more creative than men, or that you need a flash of inspiration, or only geniuses are creative, or only artists know how to be creative, or creativity is only for those who are right-brained, or creativity is mysterious or magical, or creative people are crazy, or that if you're older than 40 you can't be creative. So creativity involves the process of identifying and solving a problem by means of generating new ideas, and it's aligned with imagination. But then innovation involves the action of taking the most suitable idea further, and this is aligned with implementation. And then in terms of defining innovation, we can look at 4 things. First is to invent. Well, this is to create by thought, devise, originate, contrive, improvise, generate, or formulate. Then we have invention, and this is creation, fabrication, production, origination, and implementation. And then we have inventiveness. This is resourcefulness, originality, creativity, and imagination. And lastly, we have innovation, and this is the introduction of new and improved methods, establishment, departure from the old, modernization, drastic change, and novelty. And the complex factors of the new involve uncertainty, risk, relativity, idea, problems, alternatives, stupidity, and needs. And then in terms of defining creativity, it needs to solve problems, be original, be unpredictable, abstract, new, imagination, different, point of view, vague, process, value, and unconventional. Now we move on to chapter 2 with the creative person and the environment. So when we take a look at the creative brain, we have the trilogy of mind theory. So the trilogy of mind theory is scientifically based and reveals the role of the 3 important aspects of creativity. First cognitive, then conative, and then emotional. These 3 factors are the primary drivers from the brain that affect creativity. So in terms of cognition, we ask what? It involves thinking, comprehending, processing information, gaining knowledge about something, and environmental awareness. And then in terms of emotion, we ask how. It involves feelings, interpretations and perceptions, attachments to people or objects, joy, sadness, acceptance, disgust, anger, fear, surprise, anticipation. And then in terms of conation, we ask why. It involves linking cognition and emotion. It involves impulses to act or respond, conducting something on purpose or deliberately, decision-making towards goal orientation, and environmental awareness. But now let's take a look at the dynamics of creativity. Well, first, what is personality? Well, this is the pattern of relatively permanent traits and unique characteristics that give both consistency and individuality to a person's behavior. And the dynamics of creativity will help explain what will affect your level of creativity. So we have environmental factors. This includes personality traits, so inquisitive, independent, active imagination, adaptability. And then we also have motivation, so purposeful, fascination with task or area, resistance to premature closure, and taking risks. And then we have process. This involves problem recognition and construction, unusual combination of ideas and recognition of solutions. And lastly, we have product, so originality, relevance, usefulness, and complexity. And then all of these environmental factors, personality traits, motivation, process, and product, affects your level of creativity. So intrinsic motivation is conducive and extrinsic motivation is detrimental. People tend to be most creative when they feel motivated primarily by the interest, enjoyment, satisfaction, and challenge of the work itself, and not by external pressures. So when we take a look at creativity and motivation, we have intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. Examples of intrinsic motivation could be the curiosity to learn, hard work, own effort, enjoying the task itself, independence, passion drives me to excel, freedom to think and do, work satisfaction, and self-actualization. And then examples of extrinsic motivation could be someone looking over your shoulder, being driven by organizational targets, dependency, status, doing something to avoid punishment, money, and rewards. But now let's take a look at creativity as an achievement. So what are some of the achievement variables? Well, first we have cognitive variables. This would be intelligence, knowledge, technical skills, and special talents. Then we have environmental variables. This could be political, religious factors, cultural factors, socioeconomic factors, and educational factors. And then we have personality variables like internal motivations, confidence, nonconformity, and creativity. But now let's take a look at the barriers to creativity. The barriers to creativity are part of our internal and external environment. These are any stimuli or conditions that prevent us from thinking and acting creatively. So we have perceptual, emotional, cultural, environmental, and intellectual barriers to creativity. In terms of perceptual barriers, perceptions are the way we see things, objects, processes, people, or behavior. Perceptual barriers like making a quick decision without identifying and defining the problem, or premature assumptions should be removed. And then we have emotional barriers. So our emotions could become major barriers in the process of creativity. Some individuals react emotionally to radically new ideas and discard them immediately. So emotional barriers like the fear of failure, mistakes, and risks, or overmotivation to make rapid progress and be successful quickly should be removed. And then we have cultural barriers. Culture refers to the assigned set of beliefs, expectations, values, and norms that guide the way we relate to one another. Cultural barriers like conforming to a set pattern or stereotyping should be removed. And then we have environmental barriers. So we have the physical environment, the economic environment, political environment, and social environment. The physical environment is the place where we live, work, and play. The economic environment refers to all the external economic factors that influence buying habits of consumers and businesses and therefore affect the performance of a company. And then the political environment is responsible for formulating, implementing, and policing legislation, as well as enforcing policies, rules, and regulations. And then the social environment includes the culture that the individual was educated or lives in and the people and institutions with whom they interact. And lastly, we have intellectual barriers. Intellectual barriers are caused by an unwillingness to use new solution approaches. Now let's move on to chapter 3 with the creative process. Not to be confused with the creative problem-solving process. So the creative process involves 6 steps: interest, preparation, incubation, illumination, verification, and exploitation. The first step is interest. This phase is ignited by a problem, irritation, or curiosity. And the second phase is preparation. This phase involves thinking about the problem outside the norm or in a lateral way. The following principles apply to this phase. So first is openness to new experiences, and then analysis of what approaches or tasks could be followed to solve the problem, and then redefining concepts, and lastly divergent thinking. And then the next step is incubation. This phase deals with all the alternatives and possibilities generated in the previous phases. It's the stage of psychological freedom, where absolutely all the ideas to solve the problem are virtually churned about and solved, without any concrete solutions being found. The next step, step 4, is illumination. This phase deals with insight, where all of a sudden we get a moment of light, illumination, or insight, and a brand new solution or discovery comes to mind. The second last step, step 5, is verification. This phase aims to address all issues related to the idea to see if the idea is feasible. And lastly, we have step 6, exploitation. This phase is also called the elaboration or implementation phase. It entails high levels of rationality combined with a course of action. A business plan could be included here. So we just looked at the creative process, but what about the creative problem-solving process? Well, here we have 7 steps. First is identifying the problem, then defining the problem, then generating as many ideas to solve the problem, then idea fusing, then idea evaluation, then solution selection, and lastly action or implementation. So with step 1, identifying the problem, proper identification is by thinking, walking, and seeing problems. And with step 2, defining the problem, you could use a mind map to help structure thinking and identify the causes of the problem. And with step 3, generating as many ideas to solve the problem, this step focuses on quantity, not quality. And then with step 4, idea fusing, all the ideas that were generated in the previous step are now sifted, combined, or synthesized. So here you'd organize related ideas into categories, develop quality ideas in each category, and force-fit unrelated ideas by associating unrelated items in different categories with each other. Then we move on to step 5, idea evaluation. You select 10 ideas and they then undergo in-depth inspection. So in this step, creative thinking transforms into critical thinking. And an advantage or disadvantage matrix can be used to compare the different ideas against each other. Step 6 is solution selection, and all the ideas are now ranked and the best one is selected. And then for step 7, action or implementation, a business plan is developed and forms the blueprint for taking this idea to market. But now let's take a look at creativity techniques. So first we have divergent thinking. So divergent thinking is a process of thinking in different directions or looking for more than one option or solution. So this includes the association technique, the wishful thinking technique, the metaphor or analogy technique, and lastly the trigger technique. And then we have critical or convergent thinking. This involves analysis, logic, and critical assessment and practical reasoning. So this would involve the questioning technique and the force field analysis technique. Now let's take a look at the techniques for divergent thinking. So the association technique combines unrelated elements into the creation of something new, and it has no rules or boundaries. And then we have the wishful thinking technique. Here you identify a current problem. You force yourself to dream, wish, or fantasize about the impossible, futuristic, or unrealistic solution. And then you refer to the realistic or analytical solution. And then we have the metaphor or analogy technique. So the analogy is a link between two items that are normally dissimilar. So first you define the problem, then you generate items that are related or similar but do not relate to the problem, and then describe each item in analogy, apply each analogy to the problem statement or definition, and evaluate each statement and select the most suitable one. And then we look at the trigger technique. This transforms existing or old ideas into new ones by means of specific triggers. For example, replace, combine, minify, adapt, magnify, reverse, animate, eliminate, distort, or repeat, etc. Now let's take a look at the two critical or convergent thinking techniques. So the questioning technique involves asking relevant questions about the subject or problem or opportunity under investigation. Why, when, what, who, where, and how. And then we have force field analysis technique. This helps us identify all the forces that create and shape a problem, but also prevents us from solving it effectively. So first you'd define the problem and formulate a proper problem statement. Then you'd illustrate the worst case scenario if everything were to fall apart. And then you describe the best case scenario. And then you draw a continuum, the worst case on the left and the best case on the right. And then lastly, you list all the forces that contribute to the negative and the positive. Now we move on to chapter 4 with design thinking. So design thinking is a non-linear, iterative process which seeks to understand users, challenge assumptions, redefine problems, and create innovative solutions to prototype and test. So what are the 5 characteristics of a design thinker? Well, first it's someone who has empathy, someone who uses integrative thinking, someone who's optimistic, someone who's experimentalist, and someone who can collaborate with other design thinkers. We can also link design thinking to the 4P model of creativity. In terms of person, a good design thinker should be curious, judicious, courageous, tolerant of ambiguity, honest, and persuasive. And then in terms of process, user's acronym can be applied: understand, shape, explore, refine, and share. And in terms of press, the environment and outside elements constrain and affect designers and either help or hinder a designer's creative thought processes. And lastly, in terms of product, identifying new and useful outcomes and qualities of creative products is part of design. But now let's take a look at the 6 characteristics of design thinking. Well, the first characteristic is problem framing and problem solving, dealing with the problem at hand. There should be unconstrained thinking here, being comfortable with complexity and ambiguity, and being open to the unexpected. And then we have stakeholder-centeredness, basically user-centric. Understanding what the users want and need. Here you should be empathetic, curious, non-judgmental, and social. Third characteristic is the pursuit of diversity. This focuses on the diversity of ideas and the environment surrounding the problem by means of integrative thinking. The fourth characteristic is experimentation, the process of generating and testing various possibilities. Here you should be curious, creative, playful, humorous, energetic, eager to share and embrace failure as a way of learning. And then we move on to visualization. This aims to shape the problem and idea rapidly using photographs, sketches, storytelling, prototypes, video clips, etc. And then we have abductive reasoning. This is the last of the 6 characteristics of design thinking. Abductive reasoning is a sense-making process that allows the designers to take a creative leap and interconnect diverse knowledge into a whole. So what are the 4 design thinking questions? Well, first is what is, the second is what if, third is what wows, and fourth is what works. And these 4 questions coincide with the 10 design tools. So the 10 design tools include first visualization, then journey mapping, value chain analysis, mind mapping, brainstorming, concept development, assumption testing, rapid prototyping, customer co-creation, and learning launch. So visualization is using imagery to envision possibilities and bring them to life. Journey mapping is assessing the existing experience through the customer's journey. Value chain analysis involves assessing the current value chain that supports the customer's journey. Mind mapping involves generating insights from exploration activities and using those to create design criteria. So journey mapping, value chain analysis, and mind mapping answers the question, what is? So brainstorming involves generating new possibilities and new alternative business models. Concept development is assembling innovative elements into a coherent alternative solution that can be explored and evaluated. And we should know brainstorming and concept development answers the question, what if? But then assumption testing is isolating and testing key assumptions that will drive the success or failure of a concept. And then rapid prototyping is expressing a new concept in a tangible form for exploration, testing, and refinement. So we should know assumption testing and rapid prototyping answers the question, what wows? Customer co-creation involves enrolling customers to participate in the solution that best meets their needs. And then learning launch involves creating an affordable experiment that lets customers experience the new solution over an extended period of time to test key assumptions with market data. So customer co-creation and learning launch answers the question, what works? Now let's take a look at the design thinking process. And remember, this is a non-linear process. So we have the empathize phase, the define phase, the ideating phase, the prototyping phase, and the test phase. Empathizing involves gaining understanding and gathering information about the wants and needs of the end user, and you should be non-judgmental. And then the define phase involves refining the insight gained in the empathize phase into a problem statement from the perspective of the stakeholders involved. So here you need to make a problem statement. So personae, role objectives, decisions, challenges, pain points, etc. And then ideating is the process of coming up with as many new ideas as possible in order to solve the current problem. So here you share ideas, and no idea is a bad idea, so it's yes and thinking. And then we move on to prototyping. The solution ideas are now transformed into tangible prototypes in order to enable interaction with the users and to learn from them. So you keep it simple, you fail fast, and you iterate quickly. And then lastly, the testing phase involves testing the prototype which has been made with a sample population in order to gain valuable feedback on the efficacy of the proposed ideas or solution. It should be inexpensive and simple to execute, understand impediments, and iterate quickly. But now let's move on to applying design thinking techniques to the design thinking process. So in terms of empathizing, you could use surveys, participant observation, interviews, etc. In terms of defining, you could use benchmarking, customer profile maps, and morphological analysis. And then in terms of ideating, you could use divergent and convergent thinking. So divergence implies developing a high volume of ideas, encouraging wild ideas, leaving out idea judgment, and building on the ideas of others. So this involves brainstorming, mind mapping, random word generation, thinking of the ideal final state, and questioning assumptions. And then convergence is when the ideas need to be narrowed down and the best ideas should be identified or prioritized. And then in the prototyping phase, some design thinking techniques we can use is storyboarding, role play, static modeling, small-scale implementations, and dynamic simulation. And then in the testing phase, we could use surveys, experiments, refining the point of view, and triangulation techniques. Now we move on to chapter 5 with the creative outcome. So with the idea evaluation criteria checklist, where you also differentiate between an idea and an opportunity, you look at 5 things. So cost, time, feasibility, acceptability, and usefulness. In terms of cost, you'll ask questions like, does it cost more than our budget? Does it reduce costs in the future? Does it entail marketing costs? In terms of time, you'll ask, is it possible to put it into action shortly? Does it allow me to meet my deadline? Is it timely? In terms of feasibility, you'll ask, is it operationally sound? Does it work in actual practice? And does it do the job? In terms of acceptability, you'll ask, is it simple, direct, and unsophisticated? Does it provide some variations in its use? Does it allow leadership to go along with it? And then in terms of usefulness, you'll ask, does it meet a real need? Does it provide short or long-term benefits? And is it profitable? Now let's talk about the PUGH method, otherwise known as the decision matrix method, Well, this method increases our awareness of the competitive differentiation between our new ideas and focuses more on the opportunity in the market environment. So in terms of advanced outcome evaluation, you ask yourself 4 questions or 4 steps. So first you ask yourself, what industry are you in? So step 1 would be learning and understanding your branch of industry. So these are things like the industry structure, size, cost drivers, competitive role players, legislation, rules and regulations, government's role or influence, demand and supply, profitability, etc. So you'll deal with 3 environments: the micro environment, the market environment, and the macro environment. So the micro environment refers to the nearby environment under which the business operates and involves the business's systems, procedures, culture, management, employees, etc. So these are all the factors and forces that the business has direct control over. And then in terms of the market environment, this refers to the internal and external factors and forces that affect the business. The business has no control over these factors but can influence them to be successful and gain a competitive advantage. So this has to do with customers, competitors, suppliers, and intermediaries. And lastly, in terms of the macro environment, this includes the external and uncontrollable factors that influence the business and affect its performance and strategies. The business needs to adapt to these factors in order to be successful. So this includes the economic environment, which includes supply and demand, inflation rates, exchange rates, etc. The political environment, which includes legislation, rules and regulations, policies created by government. And then the social environment, which includes characteristics, nature, demographics of the population, gender, age, size, ethnic groups, etc. And then we also have the international environment, the physical environment, and the technological environment. And now the next question to ask is, what should my idea have, or what is the best practice? So the second step would be to develop evaluation criteria and a datum. So what is a datum? Well, this is the best practice or leading entity in the chosen industry based on a criteria that you've created. Now the third question to ask is, can I analyze or compare my idea? So the third step is discussing and evaluating against the datum. We then compare the new and the other competing entities against the datum. And then the fourth question we ask is, how can I improve my idea? So the last step, step 4, is the improvement process. So this is a flexible and open technique that forces you to continuously improve your idea to reach perfection. So in terms of the entrepreneurial process, you have the entrepreneur, the resources, the concept, the environment, and the organizational context. But now let's take a look at the 4 critical anchors in distinguishing between an idea and an opportunity. So for it to be an opportunity, it needs to add remarkable value to the customer. It needs to solve a considerable problem and customers are willing to pay a premium for the solution. And opportunities have vigorous market, margin, and money-making characteristics. And there needs to be a perfect fit between the founder and the management team, as well as an appealing risk-reward equilibrium. But now let's take a look at some of the criteria for evaluating venture opportunities. Well, first is the industry and market. So here you look at customers, users, benefits, value addition, market structures, market size, growth rates, market capacity, and cost structures. And then we take a look at strategic differentiation. So here you'll have the degree to fit, team, service management, timing, technology, flexibility, pricing, and distribution channels. And then you take a look at the management team. So here you'll have the entrepreneurial team, industry and technical experience, integrity, and intellectual honesty. Then you need to look at the economics. So the time to break even, the ROI, capital requirements, profitability, sales growth, and margins. And then we have to take a look at harvest issues. So value-added potential, existing mechanisms and strategy, and capital market structure. And lastly, we have to take a look at competitive advantage. So fixed and variable costs, barriers to entry, control over cost, prices, and distribution. But now let's take a look at the factors that play a role in finding opportunities. Well, first is active search. So this is a continuous and active and deliberate process of identification and exploration that serves as the best way to find the best opportunities available. And then second, we have alertness, being aware and ready for opportunities as they come your way. Third, we have prior knowledge. Applying what was learned puts you way ahead of the rest and lowers the risks of making serious mistakes. And fourth, we have social networks. The ability to network is an important entrepreneurial skill to have and helps entrepreneurs share, test, and exploit ideas to form opportunities. But now let's talk about protecting creativity, so intellectual property. So we've got design protections, copyright protections, patents, and trademarks. So design is the shape, feature, form, appearance, pattern, and configuration of an article. There are 2 types of designs that can be registered. an aesthetic design, which is protected for 15 years, or a functional design, which is protected for 10 years. And then copyright is a right given to an author or designer for their original work. So a copyright can protect written work, computer programs, sound recordings, radio and TV broadcasts and films. A copyright has a 50-year lifespan. And then we have patents. This is an exclusive right awarded to the invention that offers a new technical solution to a problem or constitutes a new way of doing something. This patent lasts for a limited period of 20 years, and the owner or inventor needs to give consent for the commercial manufacturing use, distribution, or sale of their invention. And then lastly, a trademark is classified as a brand name, slogan, or logo. A trademark can be protected forever but must be renewed every 10 years by paying a renewal fee. Now we move on to chapter 6 with the introduction to innovation and linking invention to the market. So innovation is the creation, development, and implementation of a new product, process, or service with the aim of improving efficiency, effectiveness, or competitive advantage. So what are the forms of innovation? Well, we have tangible innovations like the iPad, services like mobile internet banking, or processes like Android software, or just-in-time production. But now let's differentiate between science, theory, and technology. Well, science is the systematic and organized inquiry into the natural world and its phenomena, and focuses on gaining a deeper and useful understanding of the world. And then theory is a set of statements or principles devised to explain a group of facts or phenomena. And then lastly, technology refers to the know-how and creative processes that may assist people to utilize tools, resources, and systems to solve problems and to enhance control over the natural and made environment with the aim to improve the human condition. But now let's take a look at the creativity process towards innovation. Well, first is discovery, generating ideas. Then comes invention, developing ideas. Then innovation, turning an idea into a product. And then lastly, idea or prototype protection, protecting the results. And then we should know that the process of market assessment is part of the opportunity identification and determination phase of the entrepreneurial process. So when taking an idea to the market, we have to look at the idea or innovation itself, do a feasibility study, and then do a business plan, and then set it into action. So understanding market potential requires an investigation of the following. First, an identification of the potential customers who will most likely use or consume your invention. And then we have to look at sales volume potential. So you look at the market size or the number of people who will eventually buy your product. Then you take a look at price projections, so what people will be willing to pay. You do market testing, so research. And then distribution channel options, so how to package, promote, and distribute the product. Now we move on to models, processes, and patterns with chapter 7. So innovation isn't always connected to tangible and intangible goods. It's an interrelated system of processes and has several forms. So let's take a look at the forms of innovation. Well, we have innovations in products, innovations in services, innovations in processes, and new organizations and new industries. And when we talk about the degrees of newness, we look at how innovation is new to companies or markets or consumers. But now let's take a look at the different options for newness. Well, first we could have new product lines. We could have the improvement of existing products, cost reduction or efficiency, product line extensions, product repositioning, and lastly, creating completely new products. Now, in terms of new product lines, it could be new for the organization, but not at all for the market. The product line is a collection of items aimed at satisfying a collective need. The product range, however, represents related or unrelated product lines as part of the total product mix. All new added lines may be new to the organization, but it may not be new to the consumers. Now, in terms of the improvement of existing products, it could be relatively new to the company, but not at all to the market. Minor innovative changes in the product mix contributes to the degree of newness. In terms of cost reduction, it may not be new to the entrepreneur or the organization, and also not new to the market. Adding customers is actually preferred to cost reduction. So cost reduction is a continuous process, and innovation plays a critical role in facilitating the cost reductions through either processes or new products. In terms of line extensions, it's medium in terms of newness to the organization and the market. In terms of product repositioning, it's not new to the organization, but rather a new offering to the market. And then in terms of completely new products, it could be new to the organization and the market. But then what is component knowledge? Well, this is the knowledge of all the components with a significant contribution in the overall function of the system and product. For example, the battery and a torch. System knowledge, however, has to do with knowing the method, manner, and combination of components that contribute to the overall functionality of the product. For example, the on and off switch. But now let's take a look at the types of innovation. Well, first we have incremental innovation. These are small improvements of components and not necessarily sweeping changes in the system functionality. It consists of two characteristics. There's improvements to components and the system is unchanged. And then we have radical innovation. This is also called breakthrough or leapfrog innovation. It consists of new components or design and a new system or configuration. And then we move on to architectural innovation. Here the components are unchanged, but there's a new system or configuration. For example, iPods from Apple. It's divided into 4 formats: functional architecture, physical architecture, technical architecture, and dynamic operational architecture. And then the last type of innovation we have is modular innovation. This is innovation based on unchanged systems but new components. Now we move on to chapter 8 with business modeling. So first let's take a look at the components of a business model canvas. So a business model canvas consists of 9 parts: key partners, key activities, value propositions, customers, customer segments, channels, key resources, cost structures, and revenue streams. So in terms of key partners, here you identify your company's key partners, and this can consist of important suppliers in your supply chain. What key resources does the company receive from these partners? And what key activities are performed by these partners? And then we move on to key activities. Here we look at what specific key activities are necessary to deliver your value proposition. What activities set your company apart from others? And then we move on to key resources. Here we take a look at what specific key resources or assets are necessary to deliver your value proposition. You consider what resources your distribution channels and revenue streams may require to function, and what resources are needed to maintain customer relationships. For example, does your company require a lot of capital or human resources? And then we move on to value propositions. Here you identify the core value the company provides to customers. What exactly is the company trying to give customers? What problem is the company trying to solve, and what needs are the company satisfying? For example, price, quality, design, status, etc. Then we move on to customers. Here we look at what type of relationship the company has with customers. How does the company interact with customers, and how does this differ amongst customer segments? Does the company communicate frequently with customers, and how much support does the company provide? And then we move on to customer segments. Here you identify who your value proposition is targeting. Who are your most important customers? What are they like? What do they need? What do they enjoy? And are you targeting a small niche community or a mass market? Then we move on to channels. Here we look at how we deliver our value proposition. How do you reach your customer segments? Here you consider your supply distribution, marketing, communication channels, etc. And you take a look at if these channels are well integrated and cost efficient, and if they're utilized effectively. Now we move on to the cost structure. Here you identify the key costs in your company's business model. What are the major cost drivers? How do your key activities and key resources contribute to the cost structure? How do your costs relate to the revenue streams? What proportion of costs are fixed and variable? Is your company focused on cost optimization or value? And lastly, we look at the revenue streams. Here you identify the ways your value proposition generates money for your business. Does the company have multiple methods of generating revenue? What is the pricing strategy? Through what channels do your customers pay, and does your company offer multiple forms of payment? Now let's take a look at the do's and don'ts for making a business model. So do involve the entire management team in preparing the plan. Do make the plan logical, comprehensive, readable, and as short as possible. Do demonstrate commitment to the venture by investing time in it. Do articulate what the critical risks and assumptions are and how you'll react. Do disclose and discuss any current or potential problems in the venture. Do identify several other sources of financing. You should know your targeted investment group and what they want in a plan. And you should let the realistic market and sales projections drive the assumptions underlying the financial spreadsheets. But now let's take a look at the don'ts. Well, you shouldn't have unnamed and mysterious people on the management team. You shouldn't make ambiguous, vague, or unsubstantiated statements. You shouldn't describe technical products or manufacturing processes using jargon that only an expert will understand. You shouldn't spend money on developing fancy brochures, etc. You shouldn't be wasting time writing a plan when you could be closing a sale and collecting cash. And you shouldn't consider the deal is done until the check has been cleared.